We spent all this time talking about whether or not Yiheng is going to get when Yiheng is going to get sub 4 average, but Xuanyi is like showing off that, like, if the elements are right, if everything's in like the right proportions, he can cook up a masterclass average himself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Plus 3, the only show that respects your wishes during the holidays. I'm Matt Rozman, joined by John Epley and Manu Singhal. Gentlemen, how are you doing on this very festive week?
It is a very festive week indeed. I have like another one of these hats that says like naughty. I was gonna ship it to one of you guys, but I don't, USPS and whatnot,
Why didn't you ship it to John? That would have perfectly fit
right?
John's character.
Behind the scenes, yeah. Worse.
I mean, okay. Anyway, also, I'm just gonna acknowledge this right now. John's glasses are very
like quote.
They're very.
You guys wear glasses every
I don't know how to
week,
describe it. They're very soapy.
And I felt left out. So, you know what? Whatever floats your goat, as they say. Yeah, you've never
Floats
heard
your
that?
goat? No, that's not. This
think you
is
need to
not
get
how
with
the
the
Not in
saying
the
is.
U.S.
This is why we have degrees and you don't.
Okay, anyway, okay, but no, I'm not even gonna get into that. I'm about to graduate, man. Okay. Anyway, speaking of times, we have two very big times that we need to address first and foremost. Xuanyi, the WR2, tentatively, he set both a 432 and a 437, kind of, in a way, kind of dumpstering Timon's previous time at WR2. But, as has been discussed, and Manu, I know you want to get in on this, we're not sure if those are going to be confirmed results or penalized, or there's some sliding things maybe going on. So Manu,
Yeah,
why don't
so
you get into that?
first and foremost, let's talk about just like the pure like technicalities of the solves, right? So, like we'll talk a little bit about like why it like might not why it might not get finalized as 4.32, but yeah, that'll come later. But Xuanyi Geng, this kid from China, one of the fastest speedcubers in the world, and if this stands, he will have the WR2 result. And the real thing here, for anyone who does not know, he is a user of the ZB method. It's a very similar thing to CFOP, but instead of just doing like your normal F2L, then going on to do OL and PLL, instead, on your last pair of F2L, you do what is called ZBLS, and during that you orient all of the edges that are left while solving your last F2L pair. What that gives you then is you get yellow cross on top, or white cross, or whatever. You get all oriented edges, cross on top. That leads into a subset of algorithms that we call ZBLL, 470 some algorithms. And from there, you just solve the rest of the cube. Like that's just all it is. You're essentially turning CFOP, instead of like having 4 steps, you're really turning it down to like 3 steps in some sense. It's pretty incredible stuff. The main reason why you would want to use ZB, and ZB is like the whole method name, is because of its move efficiency, and Xuanyi really pulled it off here in the 4.32 average that already has reconstructions available on Recon and Z. He like averaged like sub 50 moves on all of them. I think like the average move count for that average was 43 moves. Compared to normal CFOP is a 60 move solution, right? So if you turn at 17 turns per second, which is ridiculous already, if you turn at 17 turns per second, you save an entire second by using ZB. Now, of course, you have to be able to recognize all the cases, and at this point there's like probably like 1,000 cases. So you have to be able to do all that efficiently too. And that's what Xuanyi was able to pull out on this average. And it's just incredible. I mean, he had sub 4 BPA also. So, we spent all this time talking about whether or not Yiheng is going to get sub 4 average. But Xuanyi is like showing off that, like, if the elements are right, if everything's in like the right proportions, he can cook up a masterclass average himself.
Yeah, I think this kind of ties into conversations we're having just last week's episode about Yao versus Redux, where similar light where Max Park was just destroying it with Redux, the most common method at his time. Same thing with Yiheng, CFOP, he's destroying it. Very consistent, has a lot of these top results. But now with ZB, there's a lot more opportunity to get lucky or to take advantage of efficiencies, just like with Yao. So you're seeing it start to take over. I mean, it's a far larger task to learn ZB than Yao. However, I think it is kind of interesting to see that this is the first proof of concept of it can be one of the fastest times in the world. I mean, this is result number 7 in the world, or 7th fastest result ever. So Yiheng holds 1 through 6 best averages ever, and this is now 7. So even though it's WR2, it's still just the 7th best result. But yeah, I think it does prove the viability. Beforehand, there'd be a lot of jokes about ZB about how there'd be massive pauses on last layer and how it'd just be essentially a waste of time. But I think this proves that given the correct focus, it can clearly pull out world record results. But I do want to get into this 432 and will it stand, because I think the most interesting thing about it, aside from was it a penalty, it might not matter because we might not be able to review it anyways. The rules state that we can use frame by frame review for timer starts, but not for timer stops. And I've seen some pretty sus pictures of his timer stop, but from my understanding, we can't use this as evidence to penalize them. Is that correct, guys?
Yeah, that's what it seems to be the case. Now, of course, it's not like a regulation per se. It is something that WRC mentioned, and that is, when WRC came out with this frame by frame ruling, that's what kind of caused all the sliding incident a couple months ago. And who knows, like, in that announcement, they very explicitly said that, like, there was like certain regulations that they were going to take a look at and certain ones that they were not going to take a look at. But who knows, maybe they'll have to reverse course for something like this. I mean, it's a huge result, and frame by frame analysis would be allowed to be used on any result that's within the top 50. And clearly this is in the top 50, so who knows, maybe they'll go back on it.
Yeah, I think that just because, if it's not something that we've necessarily encountered yet, I don't know if we should necessarily be like, applying the same kind of standard because like, and again, it's a major result and it should be scrutinized and it should be really looked at because this is kind of a major kind of plot changing result. But I also don't want people to like immediately jump on it and immediately just start treating Xuanyi like they treat Yiheng, um, and just have it be like, oh, we're gonna put a magnifying glass on every single solve, at a level that isn't really the same with like other cubers. So I mean I can't really speak too much on it. I hope the one thing I really hope for is that this doesn't turn into what happened with Yiheng and everything that happened with that and we talked about it for weeks on this podcast where with the was that the 2 by
Yeah,
2
2 by
record,
2
correct?
sliding.
Yeah, where like that was just weeks and weeks of, you know, back and forth stuff and like a lot of things happening and that's how we got into the frame by frame analysis getting picked up by the WCA for usage in competitions. Um, I don't know. I just hope it doesn't turn out to be something like that. I always want to play, kind of the benefit of the doubt, trying to be like good about it. And I think while this result stands, I think we should celebrate it. We should celebrate both those times. This is big news. And like we discussed a couple weeks ago, and like we're saying now, like um, this could really start signaling like a wave of ZB solvers and like getting more people into ZB. Now, of course, the trouble with ZB is, like Manu said, there's 1,000 different cases. It's incredibly hard to master. I mean, it's hard to master anything in speed solving, but it's incredibly hard to like commit all these different things, and you have to recognize all of them. I mean, I was gonna say this earlier with Xuanyi. It's very much like if he can like 27. This is a 7-year-old kid who is far outpacing Yiheng when he was at the same age. Like, if Xuanyi can develop his ZB stuff, dude, by the time he's Yiheng's age, like he might be optimizing. Like, it's the next step. We could be seeing the next 20 or so years of cubing, just like CFOP has been the dominant method for so long. I mean, again, it's hard, and you're probably not going to see too many ZB solvers because it's a super hard method to learn. But I definitely think if things keep trending like this, and if Xuanyi eventually gets the record, um, I feel like you're going to start seeing it pop up more and more, and you'll start seeing maybe methods to make ZB better. So I don't know. I think that kind of summarizes everything that
Rozman, I
And
think.
one last thing
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead. I would just say one little stat is now out of the top 30 results, the top 30 averages for 3x3, 2 of them are by this weekend by Xuanyi, and then the other 28 are Yiheng. So these two averages crack the top 30, but all the other 20 are Yiheng. So it's still dominance by him in what he's doing, but I still think there's hope.
And don't worry, like, soon that'll be 30 out of 30, and it'll be for Matt Rozman when he learns ZB as his primary method and he goes to a competition. His debut is gonna be ZB. Stay tuned, folks. We got him training. Don't worry.
Oh, if I, dude, I unironically, because I'm still in the beginning stages, I'm like, wait a minute, what if I just learn ZB? What if I just do that? And like that would be funny. I don't have the time. Seeing as how I have responsibilities like college and like work, I don't know if I have the time to sit down and learn 1,000 different cases for ZB. I'm sorry to disappoint, but also, do you expect me to get anything like below a 10 average? 10 seconds is like a 10-second average is probably like the best I can get to if I really practice. Like, let's be real here. If I'm like actually grinding on it. Look, if I can be better than both you guys, then that's what I care about.
Okay.
Anyway, kind of some more formal business to talk about here. WCA Board elections. They are ongoing right now. We're kind of seeing a change, changing of the guard, obviously, and the uh, uh I totally lost myself there. Uh, the position for WCA chair or the head of the WCA is up for grabs right now, and I just think we're going to be entering into obviously we're going to enter into a new era. I want to ask this from both of you guys. One of the can I announce one of the candidates? Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
he
do
made it.
I
He
have
made his
permission,
candidacy
Manu?
public, so.
Oh yeah, I forgot. He made it
Yes.
public on CF, right? Yeah. So Dan Smith is one of the candidates, and John, you actually have some personal experience with Dan. Uh, do you think that he would be a good fit for head of the WCA?
Well, one of being a board member is a little different than being the head because he will be a part of a bigger team. But my experience with Dan was actually pretty unique. I mean, I'm in Michigan, and I got to help organize a competition in Arkansas March of last year where Dan was the delegate. Really, probably did more of the organizing than me, but I drove to Arkansas, so that is a lot of work in itself. But what I think is really unique about Dan compared to what we've seen is, I mean, he's just incredibly talented. He's experienced, he's organized, he's professional, and he's an adult. Nothing against our current board members, but man, Dan's been around the block a few times, and so I think that experience is going to come in handy. I mean, he's a sensible guy. He listens as opposed to just sharing his opinion, and he drives Delta, which is what we need. I think everyone can agree that WCA is kind of been maybe not receiving the best PR. There can be some positive changes that can be made, and I think Dan is the kind of guy that can take all of these opportunities and find a way to make the ones that are the most reasonable happen first. And yeah, I would vote Dan Smith in a heartbeat if if my vote mattered, if my vote counted.
Manu, does your vote
No,
count?
my vote doesn't count either. I am not a voting member. And this is, I guess, a good time to discuss like what's going on with this board election, right? So this is probably the first time most of you are hearing about this WCA board election, like what's going on. Usually, when there are new positions open in the WCA, you can see it on the front page, right? But you didn't notice anything like this for the board. And here's the reason why: the board, you actually can't just randomly apply to be part of the board. The only people who are eligible, as per the WCA bylaws, are voting members. So that means anyone who is a full delegate or above. So if you're like a regional delegate, a senior delegate, you are also eligible, or a senior member of one of the WCA's various like teams and sub organizations, like WRC, for example. But if you're just like, even if you're like a delegate like me, like I'm a junior delegate because I've been a delegate for less than a year. Like I'm not eligible. Trainee delegates are not eligible, and if you're just a random member of the WCA, you are not eligible either. That's why they didn't put out like a general open call to everyone. As part of WCA staff, like I did see like when the board elections were happening, but this is why you all are hearing it for the first time. And to give you like a little bit of like a timeline of what's going to happen is right now there's like a debate period that happens. This happens for all the elections, and then after that debate period, there will be like a voting period amongst the voting members only. So that'll also be like done secretly. I don't think you all will know like the specific results of what happens. And then if Dan gets elected or whoever applies, if they get elected, you'll that will then publicly be announced. The results of that will be publicly announced to the rest of the board, or sorry, to the rest of the WCA. And then yeah, you'll see whatever happens from there goes on. One thing that's really interesting is those who have been around the WCA for a while know that there's kind of like a cadence to these board elections. Usually, most of the time, they happen in the summer, and they happen every year. This one is happening kind of like a weird time. It's like kind of like the beginning of the year, kind of at the end of the year, and so that I think is kind of interesting because we're gonna end up with we had board elections earlier this year. That was when like Nick Silvestri, for example, got onto the board, and then we're gonna have board elections in 6 months from now when Carrie Jarman, who's currently on the board, she's going to be up for re-election at that time, and that's also when Ethan Prides, who is the current WCA chair, his term is going to run out at that time as well. So, pretty interesting to see. I think the WCA has been very, or I guess speed cubing in general has been like very active over this last year. Kind of as like John mentioned, there's a lot of things that have been happening, a lot of like room for improvements, a lot of like obviously good things have come out of this year. So it'll be interesting to see how Dan and like the other applicants will kind of take that if they do get elected. And yeah, it'll just be exciting to see. 2025, I think, is going to be a really fun year for speed cubing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. It's just, we got a lot of change coming up, with all these different board elections coming up. I think that we're going to see some really positive change coming. And, all the best to Dan and all the other candidates who are running in the election, presumably. Uh, I want to move on. I actually, hold on. John, did you want to say something? I thought you were going to say something.
No, no, not me.
Why do you say it like that?
I got nothing to say, man. I'm pleading the fifth on this one.
Pleading the fifth. Anyway, we have a pretty big highlight of the week here. A little bit different from what we normally talk about, because I don't know if we've ever actually talked about MegaMinks really on this podcast before. Nothing's coming to mind right now. We're going to bring it up right now. We have a new NAR single for MegaMinks. Alexei Sinyavin with a 2460 NAR, which is a world record 5 single. I just want to say, Alexei's been kind of on a tear this year with the NAR, and just this year, last year, he holds now both the NAR single and the NAR average in MegaMinks. Manu, can you break
Yeah,
down the song a
definitely.
little bit?
MegaMix is this really, really fun puzzle. It's one of my favorite puzzles. For those who don't know, it's a 12-sided puzzle. It's a dodecahedron, which means that there are a load of pieces to track. That's why when you look at this solve, one of the things that strikes out to me is just the efficiency. You'll see there's like a little bit of pauses here and there, but his turning is really, really smooth. And even if you try and pay attention, it's really tough to notice when S2L starts and when it ends, because it's just all like really, really fluid and extremely efficient. And obviously there's going to be a little bit of pause for last layer just to recognize PLL, but other than that, it's just an amazing solve all in all. And it's just incredible. Like I said, MegaMinx is one of my favorite puzzles, and I just think it's like a really, really, I think it's a slept on puzzle, like overall, a slept on event. I mean, this weekend we also saw another pretty big result. Alexander Vucic from New Zealand getting the OCR average as well. So fun times if you're a Mega fan.
Yeah, and something that it's hard to bring up Alexei without bringing up Nicholas and Nyang, because they've just had such a back and forth throughout the years. So what I think is pretty cool is they've had this rivalry where they'll go back and forth. They're always on top of the podiums or getting NARS or whatever. And then you had last year at NAC where Alexei accidentally turned during inspection, ended up getting a DNF on his very first solve, and then after that it was just kind of over. Unfortunately, he couldn't recover, could never kind of get in the flow of things, and ended up in fourth in that competition, which was a big shocker not seeing him on the podium. But since then, he's really turned it up. He's been putting on a lot of great performances, so I'm sure he'll come back and be continue to be dominant. I mean, he's kind of taken a couple steps in front of Nicholas recently as far as the average goes in competition. So we'll see come Worlds if Nicholas has been just maybe practicing in silence, or if Alexei is going to pull away and solve his potential and become at least be the fastest in North America.
Yeah, congratulations to both Alexei and Alex. Before we go, let me ask you guys, is there anything you want to hear, anything you want the viewers to talk about, anything you want to know from the viewers?
Yeah, something I think that we were discussing while we were like running like the prod meeting, and we were talking about like these board elections, right? Something I think would be really interesting to hear from you all is like, yeah, like what kind of stuff do you kind of want the board to do, or like the WCA to do in 2025? We are coming up to like the end of the year type stuff, so there's some like reflections on like what's happened in the past. But I think one of the most important things, especially for a really young sport like ours, is like what can we do in 2025 to like push the world of speedcubing forward. And I'd just be curious to see what that looks like from your all's perspective.
Manu, what would you do if you could do one thing?
Ooh,
What would
that's
you do
tough.
to
You put me
improve?
on the spot, dude.
It's called content. I'm trying to make it.
Ooh. I think speedcubing is in like a pretty good position, like overall, right? Like the sport has been growing a lot since COVID, and I think one of the things is to kind of like maintain like that pace of growth. One of the things I want to see is like a really, really hype world. It's not something that the WCA can control, obviously. It's not like there's like a script going on or whatnot. But I think whatever we can do in order to like make these like major championships give that major championship feel, give that little extra edge that causes even like the random person who doesn't know anything about speedcubing to be invested. I think that's really important. But I think you all know that like I'm very like content pilled in that mind.
Yeah, John, what would you do if you could do one thing?
Yeah, I think that starting to put some separation between your average solver and your world. So kind of in the same respect as Manu, I want to continue to see the average goal of getting more cubers in more countries and equal opportunity to solve. But at the same time, I also want the needle be moved as far as the competitive end goes. I want to see the top solvers be highlighted to drive more eyes in the sport. I want there to be just random people that have no idea how to solve the cube. I want them to know about Maddie, and I want them to have seen that, and I want there to be an aura around the sport.
Yeah, and if you're asking me, I think we should ban clock.
All right. Well.
We should get rid of it. Jettison.
Dude, but look
clock.
at this. This is such a pretty
Rubik's
puzzle. Like
Magic.
it looks so nice. Like look at it. And dude, they're coming out with a new color of this clock now too. They're coming out with a lilac color. Dude, that one is gonna go hard.
Clock's back.
Clock is not back. Anyway, I think that's gonna be all for us here on +3 tonight. Make sure you like, comment, tell us about what you would do if you were in the position on the WCA board to change speedcubing for the better. Make sure you subscribe to Speedcubing TV. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
happy holidays, I guess, whenever it comes out.